to your screen, and it's in the windows there. It's the one labeled TF program.
It's the one that says Research Matters.
sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by thy mind led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Blessed our feet, straight from the places, our God, where we met Thee. Blessed our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
Who's the judge? The judge is God!
When we're being completely honest, the speech and debate does not offer a lot of space for people of color to be themselves. So that's why this weekend specifically, and it being the first one, it brings me a significant amount of pride, and it has nothing to do with the rounds. It's simply just walking around the campus, and like I was telling my friend earlier, like it feels like the Essence Festival linked with someone's auntie's wedding at the same time. It's beautiful blackness and people just unabashedly being themselves.
I'm gonna hit him with a blessing, baby, and it's coming.
If I was preparing for this tournament, I would not stop working my speeches as if Melvin B. Tolson was on my shoulder. An activity like speech and debate, you're going to learn more in one round of speech than you might learn in a whole semester because somebody's done all the hours of work to package it perfectly for you in 10 minutes. And I'll get to hear 5 different dang near well-developed TED Talks in an hour.
A lot of people don't realize that forensics is more than just debating. I mean, a lot of people have seen the great debaters and they think that that's what it is. That, you know, it's a 2-on-2 debate, but it's not. It's not just debate. There's public speaking. There is limited preparation where students are making speeches up off the top of their head. And then there's interpretation of literature, which is similar to competitive acting, but it's more than that because we actually create argument with literature and then act out the literature. So not only are you telling someone an argument, but you get to show them what that argument feels like. There's no other activity that allows that or promotes that. Power comes from this activity. 60% of Congress came from this activity. Heads of state, heads of media. Forbes magazine wrote an article that says if you want someone to run your corporation, it needs to be someone from speech and debate.
When I first started competing in speech and debate on a collegiate level, I was competing for Western Kentucky University. And when I joined my freshman year, there was 2 Black girls, including myself. It was me and 1 other Black student. And to me, that was a culture shock. So to come to an HBCU like Wiley College and to have maybe about 20 Black female students, it teaches, I know I'm teaching them a lot, but they teach me so much. You know, like growing up as a Black woman in America, like I've always taught myself that I have to love myself. But I didn't know that these girls would teach me how to be in love with myself. So coming here, it kind of just taught me that to be unapologetically Black, to be an unapologetically Black woman, and to just honestly just teach them all the knowledge that I know from speech and debate to a team that I know will benefit from it.
When you are on the speech and debate circuit, you are creating civic duty. So you're implementing and you're placing that seed in these individuals. So when they go out, they're not afraid to be lawyers. They're not afraid to be judges. They're not afraid to be the next Kamala Harris, or they're just not afraid to go out in these spaces and speak for the underrepresented. It's here that we learn our pride, we learn our inheritance, we learn our value. And I can't thank HBCU community enough for instilling that in students. I feel like that's always a part of my mantra. That's always a part of my duty as a professor. It's that HBCU pride, and I think that's part of just the joy of being here.
This was a celebration of culture. Ever since we started this, it has been about unity. It has been about bringing HBCUs together. And it is the best investment that a college can make in a student because the rewards are absolutely incredible. And so I truly believe that this is the most powerful tournament I've ever attended.
I want you to repeat after me. Now. More than ever. All the brothers and sisters. Must come together. Common blood flows. Through common eyes. We all see the same. Now. More than ever. All the brothers and sisters. Must come together. Common blood flows. Common eyes. We all see the same. Now. More than ever. All the brothers and sisters. Must come together. Now. More than ever. All the brothers and sisters. Let's come together.
for a treat today. Welcome. I am Regina Locust, Program Manager for DREF Research Matters for All of Us initiative. And today we are delighted to welcome you to the fourth and final segment of this empowering set of virtual presentations rooted in Research 2.0. Each Saturday during the month of April 2021, DREF Research Matters, the Black Greek Letter Consortium, and DTEC-TAG, who you will meet representatives from those organizations later, explored one segment of a four-part series defining what it means to be rooted in faith, culture, education, and today's rhetoric. But I am extremely excited today. You may think that I'm being biased, and my response to you would be absolutely. As an HBCU graduate, I am extremely proud to present this event today because we are preparing to highlight historically Black colleges and universities, some of our best and brightest HBCU students, as well as the National HBCU Speech and Debate Association. Historically Black colleges and universities, affectionately known as HBCUs, were established to serve the educational needs of Black Americans. Prior to the time of their establishment and for many years afterwards, Blacks were generally denied admission to traditionally white institutions. As a result, HBCUs became the principal means for providing post-secondary education to Black Americans. Today, HBCUs fulfill educational goals far beyond those initially set. HBCUs have played a historical role in enhancing equality, education, and opportunity for all students. You know, according to the U.S. Department of Education, HBCUs have provided undergraduate training for 3/4 of Black persons holding doctorate degrees, 3/4 of Black persons in the armed forces, and 4/5 of all Black federal judges. HBCUs are leading institutions in awarding baccalaureate degrees to Black students in life sciences, physical sciences, mathematics, and engineering. HBCUs continue to rank high in terms of proportion of graduates who pursue and complete graduate and professional training. In other words, HBCUs have been and continue to be the roots of the Black community. Out of a sincere desire to educate our communities, we as collaborative partners are committed to provide a platform to address topics and share educational and relevant information with large audiences and individuals who represent the underrepresented populations of the United States. At this time, I will introduce Peyton Terrell, who will share more about the program as well as today's event.
Greetings. I'm Peyton Terrell, the Special Projects Coordinator for the DREF Research Matters for All of Us initiative. I am looking forward to hearing today's speeches and debate, but first, I would like to introduce you all to our program. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated established the Delta Research and Educational Foundation, known as DREF, as a public charity supporting scholastic achievement, public service programs, and research initiatives focused upon African American women and their families. DREF, along with our collaborative partners, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the National Council of Negro Women, are conducting a national health initiative entitled Research Matters, Creating Possibilities to Achieve Health and Wellness for All of Us. Collectively, we are committed to educating and encouraging all individuals, families, communities, minorities, and underrepresented populations to be a part of the solution for achieving better health and wellness for their families. This initiative focuses on the objective of creating awareness about how research matters in closing the health disparities gap. African Americans continue to have the highest incidence, prevalence, and mortality rates from chronic diseases such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, hypertension, mental health, and HIV/AIDS, yet we contribute to only 5% of clinical trial participants in America. We can have better health outcomes, but it will take all of us. So, the All of Us Research Program works to increase minority participation, not only in research, but also the inclusion of African American researchers, scientists, physicians, and community organizations to increase minority involvement from all perspectives. The mission of the All of Us Research Program is to accelerate health research and medical breakthroughs, enabling individualized prevention, treatment, and care for all of us. The All of Us Research Program is inviting 1 million people across the United States to help build one of the most diverse health databases in history. Now that you know about the All of Us Research Program, let's talk about where it started. In 2015, President Barack Obama introduced the Precision Medicine Initiative with plans to improve health outcomes for minorities using personalized medicine. The initiative evolved into the National Institutes of Health's All of Us Research Program. So I'm sure you're wondering, well, what is precision medicine? Precision medicine is personalized care for each individual that considers your genes, environment, lifestyle, and even where you live. Because current medicine is a one-size-fits-all approach, precision medicine is taking an innovative approach to personalized healthcare by providing the right patient, the right dose of the right medication at the right time. It is true that data drives decisions. So I am encouraging everyone to visit www.joinallofus.org/DREF to learn more about how you can be a part of the decision-making process. To learn more about the opportunities that DREF Research Matters for All of Us has to offer, please email us at researchmatters@deltafoundation.net. And now, for the reason that we're here today, the debates. Because this event is indeed a debate, I would like to provide a disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by speakers and/or third parties in the Rooted in Rhetoric segments of the Rooted in Research 2.0 webinar series do not necessarily reflect those of the Rooted in Research 2.0 partners. This webinar is provided for general information purposes only and does not constitute legal or professional advice. I am pleased to introduce our first 3 HBCU students who will each have 5 minutes to share their stance on a specific topic related to research and/or the All of Us Research Program. We will begin with Maya McFarland. Maya McFarland is a junior political science major at Prairie View A&M University. She will be followed by Bryn White, a sophomore political science major at Texas Southern University. And then we will have Alexandria King, a junior English arts major at Hampton University. And the first student, Maya McFarland, will begin after this video.
You are invited to join the conversation about eliminating health disparities. There's a gap in medical research that only you can fill. The Delta Research and Educational Foundation is leading the dialogue to educate African Americans that research matters in order to improve the overall health and wellness of present and future generations. To let your voice be heard, visit joinallofus.org/DREF. The future of health begins with you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Maya McFarland, and I will begin my time now. When Henrietta Lacks walked into Johns Hopkins Hospital in 1951 for issues with bleeding, she had no idea that her cancer cells would go on to be known as the HeLa cell, which became one of the most important and influential cell strains in medicinal research and medicine history. So when we look at the quotation today, "The future of health begins with you," I must say that I absolutely agree with this quote for two primary reasons. First, change begins when individuals believe that they can make a difference. And second, that individual changes can break generational curses. But let's first look at why individuals must believe that they can make a difference. First, we can see this exemplified in the Netflix show, Dear White People. This is also an adaptation of a book and also has a movie adaptation as well. But it follows the main character, Sam, who decided to start a radio show on her campus to voice her concerns about racism and racial microaggressions that she was experiencing. While she was just one person, she believed that her expressing her truth could actually shed a light to some real issues on her campus and bring about change. And thank goodness she did, because her radio shows started protests, petitions, and difficult conversations on her campus about race that were previously not being had. But this all occurred because she believed that her one voice could make a difference. But we can see this is exemplified in real life as well. Let's look at the Black Lives Matter movement. Founders Patrisse Cullors, Alicia Garza, and Opal Tometi believed that their phrase, Black Lives Matter, had the ability to change not just the lives of them individually, but change the trajectory of how we discuss race in this country and how we talk about social justice. But this only occurred because they believed that as individuals, they had the ability to make a difference. Second, let's look at why the quotation, "The future of health begins with you," is true. This is because individual changes break generational curses. We can see this exemplified in the film Uncorked, where we follow the main character, Elijah, whose dream is to become a sommelier. This is a wine professional. Now, while this may seem like something that was unattainable for him, he had the opportunity to chase this goal because his father, Louis, broke the generational curse of poverty that had plagued his family for years. His father, Louis, starting a business, starting a restaurant, and creating that financial stability that previously never existed for his family, opened doors for his son, Elijah, to pursue a career that previously had never been attainable for his family, to become a sommelier. Those individual changes of Louis and Elijah even chasing his dream changed the trajectory of what are possible for the people in his family after him, breaking those generational curses. But again, we can see this exemplified in real life when we look at Michelle Obama's memoir, Becoming. She discusses how she saw unhealthy eating habits in herself and in those around her. So to change that, she began by eating healthier herself, making those eating habit changes. And then she was able to implement that with her children, who previously were a part of families who have been exposed to unhealthy eating habits, by now exposing them to these new habits that would promote good health for them and their children's children. She also brought those healthy eating habits to her husband. And later on, when she became the First Lady of the United States, she was able to take those positive eating habits and bring them not to just her children and her children's children, but to the children of the United States of America. Arguably breaking generational curses, not just for her own family, but for Black families across this nation who have been plagued and peddled unhealthy eating habits for decades and arguably centuries. So when we look back at our quotation today, the future of health begins with you. This is absolutely something I agree with and we know to be true, because change begins when individuals believe they can make a difference. We can refer to Sam on the campus of Dear White People and the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement who have changed the conversations that we're having about police brutality and social justice in our country. But we also know that this quotation is true because individual changes break generational curses. We can refer to Louis and Elijah in Uncorked, and we see this also to be true with Michelle Obama. So it is crucial that each of us believe that we have the ability to change something. We have the ability to change the health of ourselves, our children, and our children's children, and of the children of our community. Arguably, we have the duty to do so, to provide a better health for each and every one of us. So while Henrietta Lacks didn't know that she would go on to be the future of health, you and I and everyone watching this presentation has the ability to know that we can make the change, and we have the duty and responsibility to make the change, because the future of health indeed begins with each and every one of us. Thank you so much.
Is that we consistently see ourselves hearing the one lyric of, I don't see how you came from outside the club. You can't even get in. Ha, 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 let's go. That is from Chris Brown's song, Look at Me Now. And Look at Me Now is a prominent song talking about how people are consistently inside the club, always hating from outside, but they can't get in. Today's resolution that we're looking at is health research matters for us all. It matters for all of us. And the reason why it matters for all of us is because we must be inside to actually get the change and diversity that we're looking for. So today I'd like to affirm this quote looking at 3 scopes of analysis. 1, looking at a commonplace example of Serena Williams and her complications when it came to her pregnancy. Secondly, looking at the LGBT drag phenomenon of RuPaul and seeing how he gave voices to many who fall victim to health issues. And then thirdly, looking at the third intersectionality of activism, many activists who talk about free healthcare and how we need to be inside the system to actually make the change. So first, going on to my first scope of Serena Williams, we understand that Serena Williams is a Black woman dominator inside the tennis industry. She has been winning for over years, going all the way back to when she was 15 years old with her sister. One prominent example in her tennis career life is when she won a Grand Slam, the Australian Open 2017, just found out that she was pregnant. Inside her pregnancy situation, she was saying that she was experiencing some type of, unqueasy, easy feelings, and told the nurse that, she would like to be tested out. And, the nurse said that this is nothing serious, you're fine, you're great. And they did some tests on her, and it turns out that she had many blood clots that were actually bleeding inside her body that was actually giving her complications during her pregnancy. And one thing we look at when it comes to the example of health research matters for all of us is that we have to understand that to see the Black minority trauma that we deal with, to dispel that, we have to understand that we have to be inside the system. We have to add in those doctors, add in those healthcare workers who actively know how to be empathetic towards people like us, look like us. So we must care about the research that goes into displacing and dispelling this trauma, going into displacing and dispelling, the development of future treatments that look like us. As we understand that many cures that we deal with today are based off old white men that don't even look like us or have the same genetics as us, and that's a pure problem. Secondly, going on to my next point of RuPaul's Drag Race. RuPaul is a drag phenomenon who has given many voices to many of the LGBT community. And we understand that the LGBT community has been victims and the focus forefront of many STDs as well as life-threatening situations. And one thing we understand is that Black people are not monolithic. And in doing so, we have to understand that this research matters. All the voids of intersectionalities must be included. We must be able to have diversity on the standpoint so that we can hear and talk and help to all peoples of life, to help to all people who deal with different situations. And in doing so, we must see that it is an inherency to actually have more diversity on this forefront. So it must matter to us. It must matter to every individual who identifies with every type of intersectionality, every type of group that believe in as Black people, as being, the Black diaspora. And we must understand that the research must matter to us in, dispelling the Black minority trauma as well as advancing as medically, because one big thing that we deal with as a Black community is our health issues. So we must be involved and it must matter to us. Now, going on into my last scope of Black activism, and we look at many parties who talk about that we must have free healthcare, that we must be able to give everybody the proper treatment that they need. But proper treatment also goes into actually looking at and having the proper data that actually adheres to these people, that actually reflect these people. We should not be still dealing with, Project Zero or Patient Zero who does not look at us at all. We must have the research, we must have the advanced research that actually reflects us, our genetics, and our type of unique experiences that make us who we are in those programs, in explaining the healthcare system, in understanding what's actually going on when it comes to research. So looking at these 3 examples, we clearly see one common goal. We see intersectionality, and we see the focus of diversity coming from not only to sexual representation, not only to the colors of our skin, but not only to us as people, but to us as a bigger grant of the healthcare industry is modeling one person only and one person solely. And that has been a detriment to our health for years. So looking at Serena Williams and having to deal with racial issues and not being able to be listened to due to the fact that people are not on the same forefront that look like her, who are unable to understand and don't have the stereotypes that have been rooted in America for so long to actually help her when it comes to her medical strength. Looking at RuPaul's Drag Race and how he's giving many queens the voice to actually talk about their experiences with life-threatening situations and diseases, but not being able to actually appropriately have the means to actually go to the healthcare industry and be understood and be able to be communicated with. And then thirdly, many of how our Black movements talk about free healthcare, but we live in a healthcare system that doesn't reflect us or actually have the equipment or is equipped to actually, take care of us medically and health-wise. We must affirm the quote of health research matters for all of us. Once again, looking at Chris Brown, I don't say you can hate from outside the club, you can't even get in. We must put our research, our data, our genetics on that standpoint so we can get the medicine, the proper treatment that will be effective for us. It is crucial. It is imperative that we must reflect the diversity of our system. If we do not, we will continually be outside the club, hating on a system that we are not constantly changing. To be the change in the system, we must be involved and we must revolutionize it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexandria King, and I will start my time now. If you are Black, you are 21% more likely to die from heart disease than if you are white. If you live in the Deep South, your life is an average of 3 years shorter than if you live in other parts of the US. And if you live below the poverty line, you're 25% more likely than higher income Americans to develop hypertension. That information was from Dr. Dwayne Proctor, PhD. Today, I want to talk about the topic of we're all human, but our bodies are not the same. In fact, our bodies respond differently to disease due to external factors such as socioeconomic status, environment, and race. And that's what I want to talk about today and why I affirm this topic. There are health-related implications due to a person's environment. Environmental factors that affect health are the following: damaging substances like air pollution and poisonous toxins that are produced from toxic sites. Also, other environmental factors are access to health-related needs, such as access to healthy foods versus unhealthy foods. And asking questions like, does a person live in a food desert? Or do they live in proximity to clean water? Or can they access key medical resources? Reveals to us that environmental factors are key in people's health. The last environmental factor I want to talk about is the design of communities and how much rural land is around them and what are the transportation systems like in their communities. All of these things can impact a person's health. Our bodies are not the same due to extenuating factors like the environment. A specific example of this is a study that was done in New York State school districts. And basically their findings were that school districts with higher proportions of individuals living in food desert regions demonstrated lower fourth grade achievement across science, English, and math. Meaning that although the kids were relatively the same age, the resources in their environment caused their bodies to function differently in response to the same factor. Again, yes, we're all humans, but our bodies are not the same. There's also an impact of socioeconomic status on the health of individuals. Socioeconomic factors that affect health are income, education, employment, community safety, and social supports. All of these factors affect people's ability to make healthy choices and their access to healthy choices. According to the Journal of Primary Care and Community Health, people of lower socioeconomic status are more likely to have worse self-reported health, lower life expectancy, and suffer more from chronic conditions when compared with those of higher socioeconomic status. They also receive fewer diagnostic tests and medications for many chronic diseases and have limited access to healthcare due to cost and coverage. Essentially, people with lower socioeconomic statuses' bodies are responding differently than their counterparts with a higher status. Finally, race impacts the health of people's bodies significantly. The health disparities that affect African Americans in this country arise from many factors, such as cultural differences in lifestyle patterns, like the foods we eat that are in a high fat content, inherited health risks, like how many people's families, Black people's families have diabetes running in their families, and social inequalities that are reflected in discrepancies in healthcare, meaning access to healthcare and the reception of these Black patients. Because of these factors, African Americans bear a disproportionate burden in disease morbidity, mortality, disability, and injury. This has been exacerbated and revealed, especially through the current COVID-19 global pandemic. It's really exposed that, yes, we are all human, but our bodies are different and respond differently. Some people, unfortunately, have died due to this pandemic. And also, unfortunately, Black people have died disproportionately more and have been affected disproportionately more from the pandemic, according to the CDC. So yes, essentially, we are all human, but no, our bodies are not the same. The external factors I've described create discrepancies that cause our bodies to react harmfully different in health-related matters. And hopefully, soon things can change. Thank you.
So much of what we've done in medicine over the years has not really taken into account individual differences, and this is an opportunity to be part of something historic.
Most studies and most clinical trials have always been with the average white male. So as we start thinking about this in the context of building trust, I think we get back that trust by involving the community, not saying you come to us or we'll just do things to you. We're going to do things with you and, in fact, allow that information to be accessible to you, the individual.
You're going to have some individuals that are going to say, yes, good, we're getting in on the ground level of a study. And then you're going to have those that have some trepidations about it. My thing is to bring them aboard and let them know that this is for the greater good for them. We have input, and without input, there's no buy-in. And without buy-in, there's no commitment. Without commitment, there's no success.
Tuskegee happened. We're not trying to hide that or sweep it under the rug, but communities of color will be at a disadvantage if we do not find ways to get by that, whether the focus is asthma, whether the focus is infant mortality, whether the focus is diabetes, cancer, or heart disease. Communities of color are disproportionately impacted by them.
It has always been playing catch up to make sure that they're even getting access, much less minimum service. Low income, underserved, and people of color are oftentimes very generous in giving something if they understand it. And they always do so with the intention that knowing this is not just about me, this is not just even about my family, it is about helping the community down the road.
Being able to bring the Asian American population who is never at the table, not only to contribute to science, but to contribute to our ability to understand the nuances within those populations. I think it will provide a huge national data set so we can ask questions and make discoveries about healthcare that will better their own personal health and those of the communities that they are part of.
Diversity strengthens the science. It could bridge some civil rights issues and inequities in healthcare across all races and ethnicities and culture.
As a community of color, underrepresented, hidden, underserved, what would happen if you were not at the table? It is an issue of equity and it's an issue of justice as well.
It is important for minorities to be a part of this, or we will again be left with medications that are created for really other populations. I'm hopeful that we will be overwhelmed with folk.
We are truly excited today to have so many students representing various HBCUs join us for this unique event. But we are just getting started. Next, we are going to switch it up with a more traditionally styled debate. A debate is a formal discussion on a particular topic in which opposing arguments are put forward. Each debate involves two teams who take opposing sides of the topic, either affirmative or for the topic, or negative or against, and the teams will alternate speakers. The affirmative team speaks in support of the topic. Their goal is to persuade others that the topic is true. The negative team speaks against the topic. Their goal is to persuade others that the topic is not true. On our affirmative team today, we will have Deja Rollins, a junior political science major at Texas Southern University, and Alerica Bowens, a junior political science major at Hampton University. On our negative team, we will have Philippe Nicholas Constant, a senior mass communications major at Tennessee State University, and Charlie Jackson, a freshman legal communications major at Howard University.
Well, I think that what's unique and important about the All of Us research program is that, there are treatments and medications that don't work for everyone. And this program is really trying to find out why. They're looking into lifestyle, your environment, your genetics to get that answer. And I think that that's important. Personally, I wanted to become a participant in this program and be involved because as a Black person living in America, I know that we've been left out of biomedical research largely in the past. And this program is also looking to change that, and they're looking at more diverse populations. I would say to anyone who has reservations about joining that you could possibly be a part of medical breakthroughs in the future. Why would you not want to be a part of that? I'm Chantel, and I joined for All of Us.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Deja Rollins, and I'm a junior political science major from Texas Southern University. Before I'd like to get started, I'd like to give a brief blanket of thank you. Thank you to everyone here. Thank you to everyone watching, everyone who had a hand in putting this together. It's truly exciting to see so many young folks coming together and talking about real change in the real world. So with that being said, I'd like to start my time now. Resolved, minorities have a moral obligation to participate in clinical research trials. As the affirmative team, we would affirm this resolution, meaning that we are arguing for this resolution. We would like to give a few definitions. First, minorities. We would like to define as doctors and scientists of African American descent. Because we allow education for this round, we are specifically talking about African American descent because we are all from HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. We would like to define moral obligation as a duty which one owes and which he ought to perform, but which is not legally bound to fulfill. We'd like to define participate as conduct, and clinical research trials as experimental research for the advancement of medicine. So to get into it, we will start with the significance of this. The significance of having no obligation to participate in clinical trials as a doctor or a scientist is that you are enhancing the progression of medical research for minority groups. The harms of not advancing this is that minorities will continue to receive medication that is not specifically for their genetics and DNA. The solvency here is that by putting minorities in the doctor and scientist role behind the scenes, that this would create a segue for minorities to receive medication for the genetics, for their specific genetics, and it will lower the chances of side effects. So our weighing mechanisms today will be moral side constraint, which basically says that in any instance, there is a moral obligation in certain areas, which will coincide with our value today, which is situational morals, which means that your moral obligation can increase or decrease considering the situation. And in this situation, we are talking about doctors and scientists who have taken a legally binding oath. Now, I know that moral obligation in the definition stated that but which was not legally bound to fulfill, but doctors take this specific oath, which is called a doctor and scientist Hippocratic Oath, which states, I promise to work for a better world where science and technology are used in socially responsible ways. I will not use my education for any purpose intended to harm human beings or the environment. Throughout my career, I will consider the ethical implications of my work before I take action. While the demand I face upon me may be great, I find this declaration because I recognize that individual responsibility is the first step on the path to peace. To start in our contention one, African American doctors and scientists, according to the Association of Clinical Research Professionals, Black community members have shown more willingness to participate in the prevention of wellness studies than drug trials. And there is some evidence showing willingness to participate in studies involving blood draws and other medical procedures. And this goes into the Black doctors and scientists. They also stated that among the Black community members that said that they would like to participate in a trial, they said that they would be more comfortable if a Black doctor was the person administrating the trial. According to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, on its 2018 drug trial snapshot, there is a significant imbalance in the representation of minorities. Behind the scenes, whites make up 67% of the U.S. population, but are 83% of researchers. Black and African Americans make up 13.4%, but they only make up 5% of researchers in these medical clinical trials. Contention 2, African American doctors can improve cultural research percentages. According to the National Library of Medicine, for example, 5 of Fluorosil, a commonly used cancer chemo drug, has been frequently reported in exhibiting more side effects in African Americans than white Americans. And this is one of the clinical trials that could be implemented and controlled by African Americans so that genetically we can monitor how much chemo an African American is receiving than a white American. And contention number 3, promote culturally competent communication and transparency. We do understand the trauma behind African Americans and the types of trials that they have been in, but we have to understand that in order to open up communication and transparency barriers, we have to ask African Americans to be more involved in the research process because they are better able to understand and communicate to other African Americans what they are dealing with. And for these 3 reasons, I affirm the resolution that minorities have a moral obligation to participate in clinical trials.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So before I begin, I'd also like to extend a blanket of thank yous across the room. So first, I'd like to thank my partner for being willing to create such exciting arguments and work so collaboratively with me, our opponents being willing to engage, and our sponsors for allowing us this platform to showcase debate and this topic. With all that being said, I would like for my time to begin now. So we stand in firm negation of the resolution resolved. Minorities have a moral obligation to participate in clinical research trials. We would like to contend or offer up other definitions for this debate as opposed to the ones that the Team Affirmative brings you. We offer minorities refers to a group of people whose practices, race, religion, ethnicity, or other characteristics are lesser in numbers than the main groups of those classifications. We offer this definition instead because limiting it to just doctors and scientists limits the scope of this debate, and it's so much incorporated within this participation in clinical trials. We need to expand this debate, and we should have a more broader definition such for minorities and also for participation. And so we contend to your definition of moral obligation. And for participate, we ask that we use the action of taking part in something, including doctors and scientists, but also the participation of regular everyday people who participate in these trials. So with that being said, we offer you the following framework. Team negation does not have to prove why diversity in clinical trials is bad. Instead, it is our burden to prove why it is not the responsibilities of minorities to achieve this diversity. It is full-heartedly to apply that it's the responsibility of minorities to fix the errors of the system that they did not create. And thus, we offer the obligation is not on minorities, but instead the medical field or the medical industry or the government. So with that being said, judges, we ask you weigh this round on what team best advocates for the well-being of minorities. We offer the following contentions. We offer contention 1, unethical history of clinical trials. Contention 2, lack of access to clinical trials. And contention 3, the system is still racist. So our first contention, unethical history of clinical trials. As we've heard throughout this day, we understand that the history of clinical trials have been harmful to minorities and disproportionately affect them. You can look to the infamous Tuskegee syphilis studies and the Henrietta Lacks case to show that history manipulation at the hands of clinical trials against minorities has caused the sense in minority communities to distrust the system and distrust these medical communities. So we say that it's not the job of minorities to have this moral obligation to participate, but instead these medical communities need to bridge this gap that they caused a long time ago and solve for these issues of this that they caused and the distrust of these systems. And we tell you that there's generational trauma coming from these past examples of the syphilis trial, Henrietta Lacks, just to name a few. There are many, and that minorities do not have an obligation to participate in a system that has harmed them in the past, but instead to work with the system or have someone or the government or the medical institution has that burden or the moral obligation. So our second contention, lack of access to clinical trials. We have 2 subpoints under this. Subpoint A, lack of public access. According to naturemedicine.com, published on December 6, 2018, the bulk of clinical trials do not occur in minority communities. Therefore, in many cases, these community members are geographically unable to participate in such studies. What does this tell you? This tells you that minorities do not have access to these studies. This is talking about those who participate in terms of going in and signing up and actually fulfilling these roles and these studies. And they do not have a moral obligation to participate in a system that is not accessible to them, that they don't have access to go participate in. And that's what our first subpoint tells you. Our second subpoint, B, lack of awareness. This subpoint works in tandem with our first subpoint, lack of access. Hispanic and Black Americans have the highest rate of uninsured adults. So what this is telling you is that, one, that with this uninsured adults, they're not having access to health information and they're not learning about these clinical trials. So why do they have the moral obligation to participate in a system that is not asking them or seeking that out to help them in these clinical trials? And that's why we say they do not have that moral obligation. And then that takes it to our third contention. The system is still racist. Drug makers do not have minorities in mind when creating their treatments. According to the scientificamerica.com of September 1st, 2018, found the FDA does not require drug companies to have a clinical pool that reflects the drug population. Therefore, certain drugs can be dangerous and even lethal to certain minority gene variants. So what is this telling you? This is telling you that when they're making these drugs, before they even put them in the clinical trials, they're not incorporating or not even thinking about minority communities. And what we say to that is minorities don't have a moral obligation to participate in these trials and come in and set themselves up as guinea pigs for a drug that was not created for them in the first place. And that has an impact there. That participation does not guarantee benefits. These benefits do not work. Another impact of this system is still racist goes against a major portion of their case where they're talking about how scientists and Black community and these doctors need to be more involved. These doctors and scientists do not have the power to be more involved because the system itself is racist. That's what our subpoint B tells you, beliefs about minority. A study published in 2016 by the National Academy of Sciences in the United States revealed that 50% of white medical students and residents hold false beliefs about biological differences between Black and white people. They believe that Black people's skin is thicker or Black people's blood coagulates are more coagulates more quickly and are less sensitive to nerve endings, or they have stronger immune systems. So what is this telling you? The system is still racist, that these people in these positions and these doctors still have false beliefs about minority communities and Black communities. And that is important. So minority communities do not have a moral obligation to go and be a part of the system that is against them and that is negatively affecting them. So our case follows the line of looking at the participation of minorities and the participation of minorities into these clinical trials as physically going in. So now let's go down the affirmative flow and let's look at their contentions. They offer you, there's a biological divide in medicine and how that there is not enough information about Black communities. To that we say, okay, my partner will address more about these issues on the affirmative case. And we say we argue that it is not the obligation of minority communities, but the system itself. So with all these being said, we thank you. And yes, that is the end of the negative case.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alyrika Bowens. I would first like to offer a blanket of thank yous before I get started. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. I'd like to thank my lovely partner. I would like to thank our opponents. I'd like to thank all of the adjudicators and, of course, our audience. With that being said, I'd like to offer an off-road case map. And with that, the first thing I will address in my speech will be the case of the affirmative, and the second thing will be the case of the negative. And then I will go through with some voters and as to why the adjudicator should side with the affirmative on this case. With that being said, I'd like to start my time now. According to the CDC, African Americans are more likely to die at an early age from all causes. That is a statement from our American CDC. That's a very, very, very general statement, but it's a statement that cannot be ignored, shall not be ignored. And with that being said, we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere in being able to benefit African Americans in particular. So I like to address the fact that the negative did decide to go against the definitions of the affirmative, but the affirmative sets the scope of the debate. And we would like to continue forth with the definitions of the affirmative by focusing on Black doctors, and not in lieu of ignoring Black participants, but focusing directly on Black doctors, because you have to start somewhere in this sort of situation. Being our first case scenario was biological divide in medicine. So looking at the affirmatives case, we stated that from the NIH, there are many differences within biological systems of African Americans and those of different races. And I say different races just to be very blunt of the fact that we are singularly focusing on African Americans at this moment. There are metabolical differences, energy expenditure differences, and many, many more. But I would like to focus in on these differences a little bit more in addition to what my partner has stated. So with these metabolical differences, this results in medication reactions. So if you have a metabolical difference and you are administered medication that you have a reaction to, that is very negative. That could potentially kill you. That's a life or death situation. Medication effectiveness. So with us not having actual research with respect to, a lot of research with respect to African Americans in particular, this can waste a lot of time in a life or death situation. I would love to make sure that everyone knows that with medication effectiveness, it's important to figure out exactly, you have a certain amount of time when you are addressing a situation where someone is about to potentially die. And that is a time crucial moment. So without us having all this additional research from the Black doctors, the African American doctors, and the African American scientists, as my partner did state, we are focusing on scientists as well, then in a situation that could be an emergency, could be a life or death situation, people are in danger. Black people are in danger. And then additionally, the counter reaction. So once you've taken a medication that potentially could be harmful, you could have a counter reaction. You could have a counter medical reaction. And those are the side effects in particular. Most people know them as side effects. I'm particularly stating them as counter reactions because they are a counter reaction due to the drug that was administered. So that is why the first contention of the affirmative is extremely important. Second, doctors can increase cultural research levels. So my partner eloquently stated that chemotherapeutic drugs are not necessarily groomed for African Americans. There are certain drugs such as 5-fluorouracil, if I'm saying that correctly, I apologize if I'm not, that can cause many side effects, including anemia and leukopenia. These are side effects that stream within the African American bloodline after being administered chemotherapy or chemotherapeutic therapy drugs in particular. And it's highly used in this drug. So it's very effective to African Americans. But without Black doctors and Black scientists being able to have African Americans in these clinical trials, how are we to fix this issue? How are we to fix any of these issues if we do not have the participation on the ends of the medical field? Third, to promote culturally competent communication and transparency. So I would like to first direct that we all know that, or at least many know that institutional review board is a thing. So once you decide to go through with a clinical trial, there is an institutional review board, but there are research specifications that are not listed for people. So with respect to transparency and communication, we are hoping that doctors, once there are Black doctors in the seat that will be able to administer these clinical trials, they will be more transparent with the people because the people are more comfortable with them. Once you're more comfortable with someone, you naturally start to develop a more open communication line. So this open communication line that will be developed should be more focused in on explaining, these are the harms to African Americans. These are your direct harms to your particular race. That is what is not stated in most clinical trials. I won't say all clinical trials, because that could be stated in some clinical trials, and there are just way too many for us to, the affirmative, to simply look through every single clinical trial. But that is very, very important. So with that being said, that holds up all three of our contentions, and those are serious points that cannot be ignored. And if the negation decides to ignore them, then I'm highly concerned, and you all should be highly concerned too, because these are important, and this is a life or death situation. This is what we're talking about. Life or death research that will in turn have long-term effects on the African American community. So with that being said, I'd like to move forward talking about and take a segue into speaking on the negations case. The negation said that spoke on unethical history and lack of access, and the system is still racist. So this is very interesting. I would first like to pose directly at the system is racist. How can minorities expect to find better medication for us if we are not participating or not continuing to be compliant? So if we're not being compliant, I would like to ask the question to the negation, how are we supposed to find anything, fix any sort of system? I know that the negation does not necessarily have to solve that issue, but it's a loophole in their logic. It doesn't make any sense. If you're posing that this is an issue, and if you're explaining that this is potentially, it's a racist system, for to say, that's the exact words, then how are we to fix that if there is no actual solvency? So what we are solving, what the affirmative is saying, there's a moral obligation. And I'd like to go right back to that quote that my partner stated about the oath of a doctor. It states that, I will get a direct quote for you. It states that in that oath, doctors do take ethical implications of my work before I take action. So they consider ethical implications of their work before they take action. That is huge. It's an oath. It's already a moral obligation within the oath. So knowing that the oath is legally binding, but it's very important at the same time because it is something that they have already confirmed to doing. And with that being said, these are all reasons that the adjudicator should side with the affirmative, because the affirmative has a sound case and a sound foundation. Thank you.
Okay, and I will begin my 6-minute speech now. So first and foremost, I would like to extend a blanket of thanks to my opponents, my audience members, but also my lovely partner. We worked for hours on this case, and I can't wait to present it to you. So what I'm going to do first, and usually I do like to go from top to bottom, but I want to address the question and the comment that the last speaker provided for us, and this is about compliance. How do we expect to uproot this system if we don't comply? But when we look at this word compliance, we can look into the example of Eric Gardner. When Eric Gardner was placed in a chokehold and murdered by NYPD, they said it was because he didn't comply. When Sandra Bland was murdered by her respective police department, they said again it was because she did not comply. In the most recent example of George Floyd, they said that he was murdered again because he did not comply. So when we turn back to the question provided by my opponent today, how can we expect to uproot this racist system if we don't comply? We can understand that the solvency to racism is not Black people's compliancy. But let us go back to our case today, or in fact, the affirmative case, because I feel as the negative, we haven't done a just job of quite telling you why their case does not win today. So we have 3 main points in their case, and this is first, biological divide in medicine. Next, doctors can improve cultural research level. And third and finally, that they can promote competency and transparency. Now, first, I want to attack their framework before we even get into their case. We cannot say that minorities are only doctors and scientists of African-American descent because our opponent has not shown you that the problem with participation in these trials is African-American doctors and scientists. They stated themselves that the problem is the participation of the patients. Therefore, we need to be solving for the patients. But moving forward into their 3 main contentions, there's a biological divide in medicine. Our opponent has told us that if there is inclusion by African Americans in these clinical trials, then that there will be less of biological divide in medicine. But let us turn it back to the resolution. How does that prove that there's a moral obligation on Black patients, or even still on Black doctors and scientists, as they say? This doesn't do so. Next, their second point talks about how doctors can improve cultural research levels. But again, they don't tell us how that falls on the backs of African-American patients, and actually how that in mass numbers improves the participation of African-American patients in these clinical trials. And then third and finally, that it will promote, essentially it will promote transparency. And they talk about how they understand if Black doctors are a part of these clinical trials, that this will promote transparency. But they don't turn it back to any of the points that the neg has today. So with about 3 minutes left on my clock, let us tell you why the neg case wins today and why our points flow forward. Our first main point is that there is an unethical history of clinical trials. My opponent does not negate this and doesn't tell us how the medical field has actually improved this relationship, how they have improved from their past history. They don't do this at all. They kind of just wax over this point and move forward to the next one, which is the lack of access to clinical trials. Now, how can we say that there is a moral obligation to Black doctors or even Black patients, in the case that the neg is saying, if they can't even physically and geographically access these clinical trials? The AF does not provide any solvency for this. They don't tell us how Black patients will be able to be a part of this issue. And they tell us that if we simply place Black doctors at the front of this, Black Americans will take time off of work, will travel hours away to go to facilities that aren't in their community to be a part of these clinical research. And then we talk about how Black Americans often don't have insurance. So if you don't have insurance, why would you participate in a trial that you may never actually be able to receive the medicine for? The AF does not solve for this. It simply tells us if you throw a Black doctor at the front of it, this will solve all the problems that we have, which simply isn't true. But let us go to our third and final point, where they talk about how the system is not still racist. Well, at the beginning of my speech, I provided you 3 concrete examples of how America as a whole is still racist. So how can you expect the medical field in America not to have some of these qualities? They tell us that, well, we need to comply. What happened to Sandra Bland? What happened to Eric Gardner? What happened to Philando Castile? What happened to George Floyd? What happened to Breonna Taylor? All of these Black Americans complied when it came to a life and death situation, as my opponent has quite beautifully painted this debate to be about. So how does that change in the medical field? Now, it's going to be the burden of the affirmative to come in the round and tell us how they've proven that compliance equals solvency in this round. Now, this is going to be a slippery slope for them, but it's a slippery slope that they created. It's a slippery slope that they brought into the round by telling you as a Black person or as a minority, as this round should be about, not just Black people. When Fred Hampton created the Rainbow Coalition, he wasn't looking at stopping oppression for just Black people. He was looking at stopping oppression for all, just as this resolution states. So it is the job of the affirmative to come in the round now and tell us how complying as a minority, whether you are Black, Asian, a woman, a religious minority, whatever you may be, is going to lead to solvency in this round. We've proven to you how at least 50% of white medical students and residents hold false beliefs of biological difference between Black people and white people. So let the job be of the affirmative to prove us otherwise. And with that, I concede the remainder of my 3 seconds, and I thank you all for being here today.
Alrighty. So for these rebuttal speeches, before I begin, I'd like to once again express gratitude across the room and thank you for our opponents for such an amazing debate. And I hope I'm able to close this off well. So with that being said, I would like for my time to start now. So to go down the flow of what I'm going to do today, judges, I'm going to tell you why we've won this round. And I'm going to go through and look at both of our cases and weigh them next to each other. So first, there's this whole idea of definitions and debating the definitions of who minorities really are. And they simply provide you the definition of minorities and minusculing and making it smaller, the debate, to just doctors and scientists. And we tell you based upon their own evidence that that is not a reflection of the true issues of the medical field. It's not simply on the backs of the doctors and the scientists. It's also all minorities. And that's why the definition should stand for all minorities. And then participate to also be expanded to the action for taking in the clinical trials. So the key thing that we gave you in this round, judges, is who is this obligation on? What is the question that's made is who owns this obligation? And as Team Negation, we tell you that it's not minorities. It is not our moral obligation to fix a system that we did not create and that we did not make negative detriment to our own selves. So that's what we tell you. And we tell you this in our case, but let's go down the firmness case and tell you how they do not prove that this moral obligation is on minorities. So they first tell you that there's a biological divide in medicine. And then as my partner continuously said, you don't tell us how this is the moral obligation of minorities to fix. How is this our moral obligation to come in and fix these institutions that have this biological divide? We can participate, yes, but it is not our moral obligation to do so. And we prove in our case how that's more difficult for minorities to involve or become interactive within this biological divide in medicine and to solve for these issues. Because to solve for this issue, the biological divide in medicine is on the participants more than the doctors. And we tell you that in our case, how we solve for that. So their second tension is doctors can improve cultural research and research levels. And to that we say that does not prove how it's not the moral obligation of these minority doctors to come in and fix the system. And then two, doctors can improve this, and then two, that doesn't prove that doctors will improve this cultural research level just simply for participating within these studies. That will prove. They don't show how that proves those two connect. And the third contention, they talk about promote competency and transparency, how there needs to be more transparency. And we show you within our case that that's not the responsibility of minorities. This to promote cultural competency, the people who would have to do this would be the medical community, and that's not the moral obligation of minorities to fight for or to do. And that's why these doctors or the system needs to be fixed. And so then let's go down in our case. And we tell you that one unethical history of clinical trials, they do not address this at all, and that point still stands. We tell you that there are lack of access to these clinical trials. That point still stands, and they do not address this. The only tackle they give us on our third contention, the system is still racist. They say, well, the system is still racist, how do we fix it? That's not the question of the debate. How do we fix the system? No, the question of the debate is who has this moral obligation to fix this racist system? And we tell you that it is not minorities who have this moral obligation. This moral obligation to fix this racist system is instead on the medical institution and on the government to fix these systems. And so that's what we tell you. So let's go down to why you should be voting for team negation. You should be voting for team negation because we tell you it is not our moral obligation. The moral obligation is on the bigger powers at play, and that simply our participation in these trials does not equate these benefits that they're giving. They give you all these possible benefits, but they do not say how this directly correlates to the participation of these minorities in these systems. And then yes, and that's all of the reasons that we give you. And then furthermore, judges, we show you how this moral obligation of this burden of these detriments that have occurred in the minorities communities for centuries and decades in the medical field and America as a greater landscape, as my partner has shown you, how it is not our moral obligation to fix this. The morality of these issues and these negatives and these detriments are not on us to fix them. Now we can come in and do so, but the moral obligation of the question of today's debate is not on us. And we prove to you in the definition that this should not only be focusing on doctors and scientists, but as the medical community as a whole. And so once again, we proved to you as team negation that the moral obligation is not on the minority community. And that's why we're winning this. We proved to you this by showing how the unethical history was not the result of minority actions and how the system is still racist. And it's not our job to fix a system that we do not cooperate to make racist. Now, for all these reasons, we strongly urge a negation ballot. Thank you.
Okay, I have 4 minutes on the clock. Okay, I'm starting my time now. Just as a brief blanket, thank you all again for being here. Thank you for my opponents for creating such a great clash, and thank you to my partner for standing tall with me. I have a lot to get through, so I'm going to get through it very quickly. The role that I'm going to play is to talk about the very last speech given by the negation, and then I'm going to go into some voters and tell you why the AF has won this case today. So the neg in their last speech, they attacked our framework, and they said that the problem is not the patients. Now we never said that the problem. We have directed our conversation to the doctors and the scientists, because as the AF, and because it is our duty to define the round, to define the resolution, to define what can be educational for this round, we cannot cover in 6 minutes everything in the scope of a clinical trial. We just cannot. So as the AF, we defined the definition of minorities as doctors and scientists. And as fellow debaters, they know that the AF has this ability to do so. So that is what we are standing with at the end of this round. To go into it, the negation says that we cannot expect participants to participate in these clinical trials. We can't expect them to. However, the negation fails to remember that the affirmation says that we cannot even focus on increasing volunteer participation if we do not have doctors that they trust. The reason that minority participation in clinical trials are so low is because they don't trust the white doctors. So if we have an increase in minority, and that is Black, African American descent doctors and scientists, increase their participation on the backside, on the backhand, the scientist hand, the doctor's hand, it will increase the participation of the volunteers because they will trust the doctors that are there. You are more likely to trust a person that looks like you than a person that doesn't look like you. And so we're gonna go into our voters. My voter number one word run. The negation in the second speech took one word that we had misconstrued, which was compliance. And they took that and ran with it. And they failed to remember that we are talking about doctors who are helping out in the medical field. The negation, and I quote, the negation said that we cannot be the people to fix the racist system. It has to be the medical community. The negation is inciting that the medical community is nothing but white doctors, which is not true. The medical community already includes minorities. We just want to increase that. That is all the affirmation is arguing today, is that the incretion is a moral obligation that they should participate in clinical trials. We have already read you the oath. The medical oath, they have already given the oath to morally have an obligation to comply to, or to not comply, but to participate in these clinical trials. Definitions. We have already defined the definitions. They negated the definitions. We did not accept the negation of the definitions. And so we are running with the definitions that the AF gave us, which is doctors and scientists participating on the backside of these clinical trials. Because without Black doctors, we cannot expect Black participants. Another thing, roles. The AF had the role of defining the round. Because we defined the round, they failed to touch our weighing mechanism. They failed to touch our value, which both still stand. The weighing mechanism says that you are going to weigh this round on moral side constraints. AF is the only people that uphold the moral side constraints of this round. We are the only people that hold our values situational morals. And for these three reasons, one word run, definitions and the rules and the weighing mechanism, you have to vote AF.
This is Tom Joyner. We're still learning about COVID-19, but one thing we do know, African Americans have been disproportionately affected, which makes our involvement in health research key. By participating in the All of Us research program, we can help drive research for COVID-19 and other conditions, even from home. Now more than ever, our participation can play a role in improving the health of our communities. Research is hope, and it's fueled by you. Find out more at joinallofus.org/Tom.
It is clear that our HBCU students are prepared and equipped to stand and deliver. The points addressed during the debate are all relevant and worthy of consideration, but there is still more. I would like to take the time to welcome 3 more HBCU students that will also share their perspective on topics related to overall research. So we will begin with Isaiah Fleming, who is a senior chemical engineering major at North Carolina A&T State University. Then we will have Maya McClary, who is a junior mass communications major at Tennessee State University. And she will be followed by Brielle Mitchell, who is a freshman business management major at Howard University. And Isaiah will begin after this video.
I am type 1 diabetic.
My mom has it also. My maternal grandfather had it, and obviously it's a concern. I've got 2 little girls. I'd like to be around for a long time. Because I'm type 1, not a lot of people deal with type 1 pregnant diabetics. What was recommended wasn't what was best for me, because they tried to put me in a general bubble. You have diabetes, this is how we treat people with diabetes. I tend to be the abnormal statistic. There isn't a lot of research out there targeted towards me. So it's difficult for my doctors, who are all very smart, but a lot of times I get, that's never been studied. Would be nice for my girls to have more research out there that is more targeted towards them and their demographic, their ethnicity.
Hello. One of the things that makes humans so successful as a species is our ability to learn. If I'm a bird, I only learn from what I do, right? If I'm a relatively smart primate, I can learn not only from myself, but what I see the primates around me doing. One of the things that makes humans so successful is that we can learn not only from ourselves, not only from the people around us, but wisdom can be passed down through generations, and we can learn from people whom we haven't even met, from people across the world. Another thing that's really important for humans is we are conditioned to create groups among ourselves. We're conditioned to think of ourselves as an us and a them, and to prioritize us over them in the choices that we make. Now, those are 2 fairly abstract ideas, but they bring me to the resolution we have today, which is our differences can reveal important insights about our health. So that's to think about, how can we think about the differences between that us and that them, and how can they teach us, and how can we learn from them as it pertains to our health. So what I first want to start with is this idea of our differences. I see those outlined in 2 different ways: the differences that we can control and the differences that we cannot. The first being the differences that we control are what I like to think of as cultural differences. So how can cultural differences reveal important insights about our health? One of the, I think, is a great example of cultural differences is how it relates to maternity and childbirth. So here, one statistic I have is that American women die in childbirth at a higher rate than any other developed nation. That's simply American women. And on top of that, non-Hispanic Black women are 3 times more likely to die than white women to die during childbirth. It's outside of access. It's simply because they live in America. So what exactly are we doing culturally that makes this true? First, I want to start with the end of the childbearing process. So let's look at postpartum, after the baby's been born. In Sweden, maternity leave is on average about 480 days. In China, it's about 190 days. But here in the United States, we only give, on average, 12 weeks of maternity leave. That's 84 days, 400 days less than Sweden. That's just one statistic, but what I think that's indicative of, and what you'll find as I continue to talk, is that it's indicative of how we treat pregnancy as something that's not a big deal here in the United States. And that's even more true as it relates to Black and Hispanic women here in the United States. So one example I have, be it a bit, sorry, I'm losing the word, is a Chinese woman who I saw talking. She said that she moved to the United States, and she was in a Walmart one day. She saw a pregnant woman shopping for herself in Walmart. And she thought it was crazy to her to think about that, because back in China, as a pregnant woman, she didn't see herself going anywhere. She left the house maybe once or twice during the process of childbirth. And that's indicative of how we don't treat pregnancy as something that's so serious, so important, that we wouldn't put pregnant women through the stress that leads to negative impacts on their health. Another example of this, as it relates specifically to Black women, is that we don't treat them as important as how they talk about their body. So here in the medical space, we find that doctors simply don't believe Black women when they talk about the pain that they're facing in childbirth. This is shown by a change in 2006, where doctors cut death rate in half for Black women simply by following medical protocols like quantifying blood loss through weighing gauges and sponges, which means just by weighing the sponges, they know that Black women are losing blood during childbirth, but they would have known that if they would have just listened to those Black women. So this is, of course, indicative of how we're not treating pregnancy as something that's so important culturally, and that can lead to adverse health effects for the women in our society. And there are countless examples as this relates to elderly care and how we treat elderly people. In some places, we move them back into our homes to take care of them, but here in the United States, you'll find that we ship elderly people off to be out of our lives in early home care. Another is medical health, or mental health, and how younger generations have changed the conversation around mental health, so that culturally we think about them in a way that's better for our society. The second, I talked about the genetic differences. So what you heard about in the debate you just saw is how that there are so many misconceptions in genetics that we don't think about them in a way that highlights the differences. Racism being so tied into race, specifically being so tied into genetics, can take away from what we can learn from the science itself. And one thing I want to talk about at the end of my time is that how this relates to our health, both individually and society. So these are examples of how we can use cultural differences to learn about and create a more healthy individuals. But also we can do that as we create health for our society. So thank you for this time, and I urge you to think about how you can look at differences in a way that makes a more healthy society.
Armed with a camera in one hand and a passion for justice in the other, videographer Orende went around asking women in St. Thomas Aquinas Hospital, how was their experience giving birth for the first time? African-American women, in comparison to their white counterparts, significantly answered their response with a horrific experience. And we see that if it wasn't for this data, which gave videographer Orende the inspiration to make this video to shed light on what African-American women experience during their experience giving birth for the first time, we would have not been able to fully understand the depth of how this stereotype that doctors act on, that Black women can handle pain, contributes to the affecting amount of what CNN records on January 2020, that 48% of Black women survive birth rates in hospitals. A contributing factor to these death rates, we can see that in the quotation, which states, data drives medical research, we can absolutely agree for two reasons. One, historical implications, and visualization drives understanding. And it is in the quotation that Dr. Martin Luther King makes that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, which shows us that we can agree for more than outstanding reasons. So first, historical implications. When we look at Henrietta Lacks, someone who went into a hospital thinking that she would just be there for a couple of days, ended up learning that after her experience once leaving the hospital, that her cells would be used to cure cancer. And not only did she not receive a single cent or profit, we see that if it wasn't for this data, her going into the hospital, we would not have others that would have been cured from cancer. And it's because we can see in this notion that when we use data and statistics, we can actually help others. Also, we can see that this is true when we look at prisoners in our pandemic. Historically, we understand the racism that holds within our American prison systems. But there was a massive riot in North Carolina prisons. For several weeks, they endured sleeping on no mat, no water, sometimes no food, no air conditioning, and lastly, toilets backed up with several weeks of feces. If it wasn't for protesters rioting, which inspired other prisons to riot and protest about their living conditions during the pandemic, we would see that historically, although prisons have had the underlying preconditions of negligence and also going through gruesome attacks, we see that if it wasn't for this data, there would have been no medical research on how COVID-19 is affecting our prison systems. And because of this, we have learned that over 41,927 employees have tested positive for coronavirus, and 2,580 inmates have lost their lives, all due to the fact of the lack of medical research that wasn't put into it when we first saw the first riots happening during this pandemic. Which leads us to our second reason, which is visualization. Visualization drives understanding. And we can see if this is true when we look at the theory of data visualization. This theory tells us that we can understand and interpret statistics better when we visually see this through graphics of charts or any other visualizations like Orende, who choreographed and videographed and interviewed women who were going through horrific implications while giving birth. And we can see this is true when we look at the Johnson & Johnson vaccination. The Johnson & Johnson vaccination shows us that multiple people went through side effects for months without even realizing. According to New York Times, 280 people went through blood clots and other illnesses for months before realizing that it was due to Johnson & Johnson. If it wasn't for this data, which also showed us that Johnson & Johnson was directly distributed in lower income areas because of the cheap, cost efficient to distribute this vaccine, we see that not only were we prohibiting people from living a quality life, but we see that we are prohibiting people from understanding their resources. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brielle Mitchell, freshman business management major from Howard University. And before I start my time, I just wanted to extend a blanket of thanks to everyone who played a part in putting on this event, as well as everyone who's participating in it. It has been extremely informative, and I am privileged to be a part of it. With that said, I would now like to enter my speech. As the outbreak of COVID-19 has shown, America has become quite proficient in steadfast health research and production of health resources. However, our nation, in the midst of a widespread pandemic, was exposed to its Achilles heel as Black Americans, alongside Pacific Islanders, Hispanics, and the indigenous population, have over doubled the COVID-19 death rates of white and Asian Americans. This phenomenon has not simply shed light on the economic inequities in the US, but it's opened the eyes of many to the extensive shortfalls in the fields of health and medicine, revealing a societal need for a shift in leadership and practices. And Black America just so happens to fit the bill. We, as Black individuals, have the power to drive health research. This power is exemplified in three manners: ignorance in medicine, diversity in knowledge, and value in the body. First and foremost, ignorance has penetrated the medical field under white discretion as revealed through racially biased practices in medicine. According to a journal article from the National Center for Biotechnology Information, physicians increasingly use their patient's skin color or other physiological features as a first step towards individual treatment under the assumption that specific traits cluster by race. However, most scientists agree that race makes a bad scientific concept. Not only do humans share 99.9% of their genetic makeup, but most of the variants that occur in the remaining 0.01% of the genome are shared between whole populations. Second, diversity is needed to progress in knowledge. As of 2019, the racial composition of physicians in America was over 50% white and only 5% Black. These figures are extremely alarming, especially when considering the disproportionate mortality rate of non-white individuals in comparison to their counterpart. White practitioners have proven to be incapable of fully understanding the Black body of their own merit. Thus, a more diversified pool is essential in adhering to patients' needs in a more adequate manner. And finally, the Black body holds valuable information. Although as human beings, we are more similar than different genetically, we all harbor unique identifiers to differing degrees that can be useful in the realm of health research, both for those around us and for ourselves. African-American Thomas Good is a prime example of this notion, as he was saved from his life-threatening diagnosis of multiple myeloma via a series of clinical trials. Our bodies hold the answer to a plethora of medical mysteries, and we have the power to access those answers. So, now that we know this power exists, and not within arm's reach, but inside of our very beings, what is our obligation to it? Well, as best embodied by the guiding scripture of Caroline E. Lewis, Delta Research Educational Foundation Board President, Luke 12:48, to whom much is given, much is required. As the patterns of this nation will display, the Black body has been abused, victimized, underserved, and quite frankly, disregarded. However, it can never be stripped of its value and its purpose. We must utilize the vantage point we have in driving health research to advance health practices and health professionals to what they ought to be. What does this look like? becoming more involved in medical research organizations like DREF and the All of Us Research Program to aid in the collection of more authentic data, pursuing professional careers in the fields of health and science to incite more diversity in thought, informing ourselves on the medicine given to us as well as the medical practices performed on us to gain a better understanding. I acknowledge that this journey is going to be uphill and extremely arduous. I also acknowledge that it is going to take time, but it is not impossible. And where there is a possibility, there is a responsibility to pursue it. Now, I'd like to leave you all today with a quote from novelist Alice Walker. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Since 1619, Black individuals have been excluded from health and medical discussion. And the crazy thing about that is we are just now breaking into the conversation. We have been so busy fighting back the physical scars inflicted on us daily that we have conceded our inner health to a fate of deterioration. But as George Floyd reminded all of us in the summer of 2020, we are both deserving and able of full equality and a just existence, and we have the power to make that happen. We have the power to drive health research. We have the power to bridge the gap. Thank you.
Students, you all did an amazing job. As we venture further into the 21st century, it is vital that we understand the relevancy of research in order to connect our present and past by deepening our understanding of the world in which we live. Just as research was conducted and data was collected and compiled in order to create your speeches or your stance in the debate, the same theory can be applied as it relates to the concept of precision medicine. Precision medicine is developing healthcare and treatment created and tailored specifically for you. As you all have witnessed, everyone has a perspective. Everyone's voice and opinion matters and should be heard. No matter your point of view, we must take the subject of our health seriously. Whether you choose to participate in biomedical research or you decide to adopt a healthier lifestyle, I hope something that you heard will inspire you to be more proactive about your health and encourage others to do the same. May today serve as a reminder that the future of health begins with you. I will now turn it over to Ms. Regina and some very special guests.
Thanks so much, Peyton. Today has been absolutely amazing. So I know some of you may be thinking, well, who are these students and how did they all get together and who organized this? So just want you to take a couple of minutes to watch this video and it may address some of your questions. Yeah, I was about to kill my cheeks over here. Okay. I'm like, oh my God. And I know, and I couldn't even text. I was just laughing. I was just sitting here. Okay. So anyway, after this
talking about critical thinking skills. So I think that debate is so important because it teaches you to, number one, think on your feet. Number two, how to articulate what you're trying to say. And number three, to organize your thoughts. And that's why I think that debate is so important, not even just for African Americans, but for everyone, because it's it teaches you organization. It teaches you how to get in front of a speaker. It teaches you how to stand up for something. It teaches you how to research.
This intellectual exchange, this intellectual prowess has to be taught.
And it definitely has to be taught on HBCUs, at HBCUs and on our campuses. So we have so much that we have to go over. We have so much that we have to teach, so much that we have to fight. And at Howard University is right there in Washington, D.C. We send so many students that are actually going to do interns on Capitol Hill, where they're coming from everywhere. And so they're learning how that debate style is not just in the academic form of just classic debate or traditional debate, but they're learning how to win over persuasive speech on the floor of Congress. So we definitely have to cultivate this space, nurture it, and let it grow.
I think debate sparks conversation, and then conversation sparks policy, and policy changes the social construct, and it's a social engineering tool. So I think all starts or stems from debates and actually having conversations and actually convincing someone to believe that a certain belief matters, or a certain rhetoric or argument matters.
The power of persuasion is so important in all aspects of your life, even beyond just like speech competition or things like that. Like you'll have to persuade people to give you jobs. You have to persuade people to like allow you to do things, and it's just incredibly important. And I also feel like knowing how to speak and advocate for yourself is one of the most important things you can learn. So the power of advocation is immensely important, especially for a person of color.
That frame of mind where people believe, oh, it's not important. You're just going on stage and talking while athletics are going to the gym, or you're doing this and doing that. People just don't deem it important when really it is. For athletics to get funding, there has to be someone to go into the room and be like, yo, we need this. When you have a championship win and you see an athlete go on stage and talk, they have to know what to talk. It's important. Communication itself is a skill that is important.
We need to take a good look at our criminal justice system, not our prison system.
They teach you to produce ideas. And so debate takes you through all that. You have to learn and research an idea. You have to kind of sort out where your opponent will be, where you are going to be, define the terms, and then produce. And that's something that public education does not always do. It does not teach you always to produce an idea. And so debate is kind of the last remnant of classical education, where like Socrates, Aristotle, all the great minds that we talk about in history, they were raised in learning information, processing it, and then outputting it verbally, right? And so there's something to say about saying the ideas and contending with other people.
I wish more of the HBCUs could get on the main circuit and be seen and be heard. So just to see that HBCU Nationals in year 3 is growing, seeing some of the competitors groom, seeing the friendships built and established between just the competitors.
We come here and see all Black people competing with each other and being great and having all the knowledge capable to do something like this. And it's really nice to see everyone give their own opinions. Like I said, perspectives from all around is really cool.
Many of our HBCUs don't have speech and debate teams. We need more, and we need more popularity of speech and debate on our HBCU campuses. So I think the more popular these tournaments like this get, the more administrations will fund HBCU debate teams across the country.
The excuse, right? Why you are who you are. God made you as a class. And this is providing for you to understand that it's relevant communication. At home, we actually have women and a whole class that just for 1 year called communication. Right? So just being here and putting those theoretical, keep going with those theoretical lessons, find the essence that we need to defend ourselves. And so keep on going until you find that reason as to why you need to defend the arts and defend yourself as an artist. Keep going.
In the video and viewing today's event, you may be asking, now who is the person behind this amazing group of students? Well, I'm glad you asked. Please help me welcome Dr. Christopher Coach Medina. Coach Medina, hi.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having this event.
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for saying yes. It was just an idea until you agreed, and we are truly, truly, truly appreciative. So, Coach Medina, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to work with HBCU students as well as the Speech and Debate Association.
I started competing in speech and debate when I was in high school. And in actuality, the short story is it saved my life. I probably would have ended up dead had I not been competing. And I mean that in a very literal sense. So because of that, I dedicated my life to trying to save as many other students as I could, give them the same opportunities that were given to me. And then, as my career progressed, I ended up becoming the head coach of the Great Debaters. And when I did, I became so close with the students. The students inspired me. They motivated me. They were amazing to work with. Some of the most dedicated, some of the most talented students I had ever worked with. And they got amazing opportunities. And I looked around and so few HBCU students had those same opportunities. And so we decided that this was something that we had to try to bring to all HBCU students.
Wow, I'm sorry, I was caught up in the answer. So tell us a little more about your experience with the Great Debaters.
So when I got to the Great Debaters in 2011, we were able to, the students actually ended up winning about 3,500 awards, about 60 national championships or so. They did absolutely amazing things, but more importantly than that, they actually maintained a 97% graduation rate. 91% received scholarship offers to graduate school. And every single student who went to graduate school now has a graduate degree. Those are the statistics that we really should be looking at. It's not all about trophies and who wins, and it's about making sure that students have the skills that they need to succeed. And as you can see here today, all of these students are really honing those skills that are going to make them successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Truly impressive. A great showing of our students as well as our historically Black colleges and universities. Absolutely. So, Coach Medina, tell us a little bit about the research and how research is connected to speech and debate.
Research is fundamental to speech and debate. It's absolutely the foundation of everything it is that we do. And not only is research for medical programs important, but also research in every aspect of our life. For example, when I was coaching the Great Debaters, I created a speech or debate across the curriculum program where we taught all students how to debate. And we had debates or discussions in every classification of every major. And then I studied it. The research was the foundation to understand that change can happen. In education, where we all feel that we don't know how to make a difference, research makes that difference. So research is fundamental, and all of these students have that opportunity to learn research, learn about it, how to use it, and how to do it.
Amazing, amazing. So, okay, Coach Medina, I'm sure there are people out there that have either seen, the Great Debaters or have watched this event today or have, been a part in some way, shape, or form of some type of speech and debate activity. But is there an opportunity or are there opportunities for either non-HBCU students or those of us that have already graduated from an HBCU or non-HBCU to get more involved or to learn more about you, the association, the students, any type of opportunities for them to learn more about speech and debate?
Absolutely. It takes, as they say, it takes a village, right? So many people have to come together in order to make these events possible. And we do this through donations and fundraising and so forth. One of the opportunities we have is I've created a class about public speaking. And we're offering it to everyone who wants to learn more about public speaking and be able to hone those skills themselves, because communication is fundamental. Communication helps us in every aspect of our life. And so we want to help others who help our association. So it's like a win-win situation. They can help us and we can help them. But there are also other opportunities to judge, to participate as coaches. to even just encourage and reach out to these schools, maybe donate to the schools themselves. There's always opportunities for people to help. All they have to do is take the first step and reach out a hand.
Absolutely. So do you have contact information? Is there a website? Where can they learn more about these opportunities?
Absolutely. Our website is www.hbcuspeechanddebate.org. That's hbcuspeechanddebate.org. All the information is there. My contact information is there. Would love to hear from everybody because I think that as a community, we can all come together and help even more students.
Absolutely. Coach Medina, thank you so much. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to coordinate this. It's a lot of work on the back end that people don't see. But thank you for your dedication, for your enthusiasm, for your drive, and your true, genuine compassion and care for these students. Again, thank you so much for being a part of our event today.
Thank you.
Today, we are also joined by our collaborative partners for the Rooted in Research 2.0 webinar series. We have Jennifer J.J. Jones of the Black Greek Letter Consortium and Dr. Johnny Cruz Craig representing DTEC-TAG. If I'm going to disappear and we're going to let Johnny and JJ come up and tell a little bit about their organizations, and then I have one or two quick questions for them. Hey, Johnny.
Hi, Regina.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm awesome. So, Johnny, I have a question, and this is a loaded question. But what are some of the highlights or sticking points shared during today's presentations by our HBCU students that resonated with you?
As an educator, this is a loaded question for me because everybody was absolutely amazing. So I don't want to talk about one thing, but a couple things that I heard just brought forth nuggets of wisdom and understanding and education for me that I would like to highlight, if that's okay, from everything I heard from every student here. Basically, when you look at teaching, there's something called Bloom's taxonomy. And what I heard today was a lot of higher order thinking. Okay, I heard analysis, synthesizing. I heard a bunch of connection and application, and that was amazing because it was all applied through the skill of researching to prepare for a debate, right? So it really thrills my heart to hear that, and I'm not lost in knowing that we can truly abolish intellectual laziness with exposure and experiences such as this debate team and these opportunities. So that rung very, very, very true for me throughout this. Another thing is that data in research matters, right? We heard that on both sides. It doesn't always yield a positive outcome. However, it always leads to understanding. And so even from hearing them today, I got a different perspective. I got a different understanding, which makes the argument all the more important because we need to talk about it and we need to understand the importance of it. So they all brought that to the table through everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. Somebody said something at the end. I can't remember who said it, but they said it's not just blacks, it's black bodies. That thing hit me like an iron. I was like, whoa, black bodies. We're not just talking about black. So I love the way that they define that. Another last thing I will say, it's two. Where there is possibility, there is responsibility. That was really, really good. And then lastly, I think the world can walk away with a great learning here. And that is debating, arguing, disagreeing, or whatever can be done in decency and order.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's amazing, Dr. Craig. So since I have you here, let me ask you, this is the fourth segment of our Rooted in Research webinar series, and here I am with another loaded question. But what would you say has been your most memorable experience through these four events?
I have to take these four have been uber amazing. But I have to go back to the original series and how we even got to this Rooted in Research 2.0. And when I think about this question, one word keeps resonating with me, and it's intentionality. The intentionality of this series, period, from May 2020 to April 2021, has been what has gone before us to make sure that our community receives knowledge and understanding and wisdom in a different way that lives on a space that they can come back to at any time to rewatch, to share, to include in their programs, to talk about in class. So that intentionality for me is what resonates for this overall series, just the thinking and the strategy behind it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnny Cruz Craig, for not only your assistance today, but your assistance over the last 4 years with DREF Research Matters, your commitment to Delta teacher efficacy, teachers campaign, teachers advocating great change, DTEC-TAG. Thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you even for your work with the All of Us Research Program and just your commitment to education and educators. We truly, truly appreciate you. And coming up next, we got JJ. Can we get JJ?
Here I am.
Hey, girl. Hey. So JJ is with the Black Greek Letter Consortium, and I'll let her just share a little bit about BGLC, and then JJ, I'll ask you the same questions that I asked Johnny.
Okay, so the Black Greek Letter Consortium consists of all the Divine Nine organizations of fraternity and sororities. And what we do, we're in partnership with the All of Us Research Program, and we go within our community and our members and share, educate, and bring awareness to the All of Us Research Program. So that's what we do, and we partner with great and wonderful individuals like Regina with DREF and DTEC-TAG. So that's what BGLC is.
Awesome. So JJ, back to my loaded question number one. What were some highlights or sticking points shared during today's presentations by our HBCU students that really resonated with you?
Oh my goodness, I think that Johnny covered a lot of that, but I work in higher education as well, and I'm just overwhelmed by the talent that was present today. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. And when I think about the future of our community and it's in the hands of these students, we should be proud and okay. The hope lies in these young people. And I mean, there were so many nuggets that they brought to the table. And I've been working with this program for 4 years, and they broke it down in layman's terms. Actually, that's what they did. They broke it down. So all the research they did on the program and presented it before us today is some things that we've been trying to, we do as a Black Greek Letter Consortium, but y'all did that. I mean, they were amazing. It warms my heart. And I put in the chat that HBCUs are producing shaping these wonderful leaders. They are. And I'm just overwhelmed about who you are and whose you are. I don't have enough words to say it because they did it all. They did great. I can't thank you enough for being a part of this. And I was just thinking, like, when I was in college back then, I don't know if I could do all that, but they did it. They did an excellent, amazing job.
They really, 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 really did. I was like, I'm a speech and theater major, but we didn't have Coach Medina. I don't know what happened, but yeah, I'm truly grateful that he's in place now to work with our HBCU students. And JJ, what would you say is one of your most memorable rooted in research moments? 2.0 moment.
You know, I was even trying to think as Johnny was speaking. Oh my goodness. I think that they all build on each other in the way that they were presented. So each of them had their own topic. So you had rooted in faith, rooted in culture, rooted in education, and now rooted in rhetoric. This to me is a compilation of who our community is. Like these things together, all of these different things bring us together and make us strong. So I don't know. I just think that just each of them had their own uniqueness. And I think, like Johnny said, the intentionality and how we took what we did before and brought it to this. So I mean, all of it, every aspect of it, all four. And I know that was not your question, but I just can't name one thing because all of them had something that just warmed my heart, touched me, resonated with me. And it just like this right here summed it all up. So if I had to pick something, it would be this. to see these young people representing us like they just did.
I agree 110%, JJ. And just as I shared with Johnny, you know, ever since we started partnering with BGLC, I think in preparation for the 2018, was it, Atlanta Greek Picnic, it has been nothing short of amazing. Just thank you. Thank the entire BGLC team. Thank the entire National Panhellenic Council. Anytime we call on them, they come ready to work, ready to answer. And we're truly, truly grateful for the work that you all do as an organization or as a team collectively, as well as when you partner with us. We know we would not get the exposure that we get had we not partnered with BGLC. So we are truly, truly grateful. I ask now that you take a moment to complete the survey that will appear on a QR code. It's the All of Us Exit Survey. And I'm going to ask that you scan the QR code so that you can complete that survey. You've learned a lot about the All of Us Research Program today and different perspectives. And so we definitely want to capture your thoughts and your feedback as it relates to this program and this presentation. You can also access the survey by clicking the link in the comments. Feel free to visit our social media platforms in order to view previous events and presentations. You heard Johnny and JJ, as well as me, reference the Rooted in Research 2.0 webinar series. And so you will see all 4 of the events there on our social media, but there are tons of other programs and activities. We've been virtual now, doing virtual work consistently since March, April of 2020. So there's a lot of content there, no matter whether you want to dance, whether you want to learn, whether you want to talk about finances, education, research, health and wellness, whatever the subject matter, I guarantee you on our website, there is something there for you. In the event that you have additional questions or you want to get in contact with us, feel free to email us at researchmatters@deltafoundation.net. And to learn more about the All of Us Research Program and its benefits to our communities, visit us at www.joinallofus.org/DREF or www.joinallofus.org/together. Again, if you missed any of our absolutely amazing virtual events, or if you just want to go back and watch them again, feel free to visit DREF Research Matters, NPHC, or DTEC-TAG on Facebook or any of our other social media platforms. I guarantee you, you'll be encouraged, entertained, and educated. Today marks the end of our Rooted in Research 2.0 webinar series, but it also marks the beginning of what we hope will be a paradigm shift in communities to embrace and welcome the conversation of research as it relates to health and wellness. Research is continuous, and it impacts our daily lives. Research builds knowledge, facilitates learning, increases understanding, spreads awareness, aids in building success, finds, gauges, and seizes opportunities, and provides an avenue to expose lies and amplify truth. As collaborative partners, DREF Research Matters for All of Us, DTEC-TAG, and the Black Greek Letter Consortium, we created the Rooted in Research 2.0 webinar series out of a commitment to strengthen the African American experience through celebration and education. But not only that, through faith, culture, education, and rhetoric. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as we end, we want to leave you with what it looks like when you partner with purpose.
Partnering with purpose is to unionize to create structural impact and cultural changes. The Delta Research and Educational Foundation is doing this work with Research Matters for All of Us, the Delta Teacher Efficacy Campaign, and the Black Greek Letter Consortium. The Delta Research and Educational Foundation is creating a meaningful path to health and wellness as a national community engagement partner of the National Institutes of Health All of Us Research Program. Since 2017, the DREF Research Matters for All of Us initiative, in collaboration with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the National Council of Negro Women, has conducted outreach and awareness in African American communities to promote the importance of biomedical research. Visit www.joinallofus.org/DREF to learn how you can shape the future of health. The Delta Teacher Efficacy Campaign is conducting the TAG initiative, Teachers Advocating to Lead Great Change. The DTEC-TAG program trains educators on achieving equity in their educational system. Connect with DTEC-TAG by texting Join TAG to 51555. The Black Greek Letter Consortium, or the BGLC, seeks to engage and educate their members and the communities they serve on the importance of knowing and understanding all aspects of medical research by partnering with the All of Us Research program to enroll 1 million Americans in the program. BGLC consists of all 9 historically Black Greek fraternities and sororities: Alpha Phi Alpha, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, Kappa Alpha Psi, Zeta Phi Beta, Iota Phi Theta, Sigma Gamma Rho, Phi Beta Sigma, and Omega Psi Phi. Partnership serves us all. As Shirley Chisholm reminds us,
I would remind all Americans at this hour of the words of Abraham Lincoln: a house divided cannot stand.